Welcome to Threads of Sustainability, where you get to hear the passionate, informative, and engaging conversations of creatives, makers, manufacturers, and producers from all over the globe. We explore what sustainability can look like in the quilting, fiber, and textile world, and I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty, also known as the Sustainable Quilter. Welcome to another episode of Threads of Sustainability. I am Bridget O'Flaherty, your host, and today I am going to be talking with Radha Weaver. And Radha is the owner of Sewing Through Fog, and it's a modern quilter's resource for quilting with repurposed and upcycled fabrics. So she is a quilter who upcycles fabrics, which is super cool. And she's got this unique expertise and passion, which was fueled by a 15-year career in the apparel and textile industry, where she had a front seat to the rise of fast fashion. So it was a super interesting conversation where she talked about her the experiences she had around that, and when she hit a tipping point and really felt like she needed to pivot in her life and make a career change, and took some time and some space for herself to figure out what that was going to look like, and came out with becoming a quilter who is really, really trying to educate around sustainability. We had this great conversation around identifying materials when you're looking for different fabrics, and a whole bunch of other really, really great conversations. I could have talked to her for a very, very long time. Anyway, she and I have become fast friends, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the Threads of Sustainability, Radha Weaver. It is so nice to have you here. And I would like you to tell me a little bit more about where you are, what you're doing, and why are we talking today?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. I think talking about threads and sustainability are kind of my two favorite conversations. But I'm based in San Francisco, and I've had a bit of a, unique path to get to quilting, as I think maybe a lot of people have. But mine's definitely my own. I I grew up sewing. My great grandma was a seamstress, and it's been part of who I am my entire life. I went to school for design, but then I ended up making a little bit of a detour and ended up in the apparel industry in corporate. I worked for Levi's
So
for 15
how did you get
years.
there? Did you go to school
Yeah.
and do that stuff, or how did you get into working at Levi's?
So I was actually right after university. I was working as a fashion writer, which don't ask me how I got into that. I just tend to do things. But based in San Francisco, Levi's is based here. And really the honest story of what happened is someone had asked me to write an article on the history of denim. I've always loved denim,
Okay,
love Levi's.
interesting.
And I was writing an article and I was looking at the Levi's website and I read this story about their CEO at the time, Bob Haas, who in like the late 80s, early 90s, it was during the AIDS epidemic in San
Okay.
Francisco, and he would stand in the atrium, the bottom of the building that everybody still works in, and he was passing out information on HIV/AIDS and condoms at a time when it was like so stigmatized to talk about
Interesting.
it. And I've just been, which I think this will probably now make more sense later in the conversation, but the way that I was raised and like values and helping other people and kind of helping the world, those around me, is just something that's always been incredibly important to me. And I never really thought that I could go into the corporate world because it felt so kind of different to maybe what my values were, how I was raised. But I'm I live in San Francisco. It's a really expensive place, and
Sure,
I
sure.
wanted healthcare and all that, 401k, all that
Yeah.
stuff. I'm just a human, and reading that story about the CEO at the time and the values of the company, I was like, huh, this could be like a good fit. I love the product, I love the company. So that was really the impetus of why, I mean, I applied for it was the lowest level job you could ever get. It was like a data coordinator, you know, organized samples in the closet. Of course,
Right, right,
it made 3 times as much money as I was making as a fashion writer at the time.
right.
Um, but yeah, I started at the absolute bottom. I never intended to stay there more, more than 5, maybe 10 years, because my intent was always to go learn about business, learn about the
Okay.
industry, but then leave and use those skills and that knowledge to help, again, as I said, like help local businesses in San Francisco or small artists, or
Right,
just
right.
kind of use those skills in a different way. But I mean, I love the company. I
How long did you
had
end up staying?
15 years.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, no, and I mean, again, just the opportunities that I got there to learn and to
Sure.
experience and to travel all over the world, like things that I would never have been able to do.
Right,
And that was a lot of kind of what kept me there for so long.
right. So why did you leave?
Yeah. So it, starting, I think the longer I was there, the more I got promoted, the more visibility I had, and the more kind of just awareness I had as a person living in this world, getting older. I started, I really started to have a problem with the apparel industry in general.
Right.
And
The whole
I
idea
would
that
say
around fast fashion?
absolutely. And again, I mean, the industry has changed, dramatically in the 15 years I was at Levi's, but just seeing firsthand how much waste was created. And
Right,
this is where Levi's is at the forefront of sustainability for a denim company.
right.
They have really good practices in place. So to see that working there and then knowing that there's so many other companies in the world that aren't like that, it just, like, being in a factory in Bangladesh and seeing the rolls and rolls and rolls and rolls of fabric, and
Right.
actually seeing on a piece of paper how many units of jeans, you know, we were shipping to like a big retailer, or how much, Target was going to charge for something, like. And again, at the end of the day, it's a they're everything's they're for profit company. It's
Right.
like it wasn't that it was anything wrong or anything that I didn't expect. It's more that just really, it's one thing when you see like someone's little posting or a meme about like, oh, did you know that a truck full of clothes end up in a landfill every second, which is true. Um,
Yes.
but it's another thing to actually kind of see it on a piece of paper and see and feel like that you're
Contributing
part
to
of the
it.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And that, I mean, that was, and
It's
it's
like
so
it's like
interesting.
being complicit, right? It's
Totally. Like a
yeah.
little, I kind of joke, but I'm not, about me feeling like I'm doing a little bit of penance
Right.
because it's like I was really good at my job. I convinced a lot of people to buy a lot of pants.
Right.
And there is some, again, it was I was so divided. I loved the company, I loved my job, I loved
Yeah.
the security it provided, but I also just I put so much of my passion and myself and my energy and who I am into my job and everything I do. And I just didn't want to do that, put that energy and passion and everything into trying to bring product in from another country to this country to put it somewhere that it was probably going to end up, in the back of someone's closet in a landfill, whatever. So, I mean, that was something that was weighing on me for years.
Right. And so you decided to leave, and then what?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was the pandemic, and
Okay.
I mean, I've talked to so many other people. It's interesting that had kind of a similar experience where finally I was not traveling every week. I was in my house and I
Right.
was really thinking about, what I was doing. And the room that had always kind of had my sewing machine was now a home office. And just kind of having to stop for a minute
So you
and
had the space
really,
to think about it. Yeah.
yeah. And I realized that I was just completely burnt out
Okay.
because I think and burnout's kind of hard to talk about because I don't really know what it is, but um, on top of how I was feeling, the corporate environment, like I am a fairly straightforward, honest person. And I just like to say what's on my mind. And even though I was, I guess, quote unquote, successful in my job and I had a good reputation, I was also always having to watch what I said and always having to, I think, maybe be someone else.
Sure.
And
It's
I
a
think
it's a
that
bit of a
was
game,
what
maybe, right? Like,
absolutely.
yeah,
And, as a very outspoken woman in that culture, and it was just, yeah, it had kind of taken its toll on me. And I
sure.
was really, really, really burned out. And when I left, I don't even think I'd planned to do it, but the my last day was like a Friday, and then that Monday, I went into my home office. I took every single piece of technology and computers and everything, put it in the closet, pulled out my sewing machine, and set it up as a sewing room, and I started making my first quilt.
Nice.
I had never made a quilt before. I had the whole world. I had started following some people on Instagram,
Sure.
but that was it. I had no idea really kind of what I was getting into. It just felt
It's a great big
like
world in
almost as
here.
therapy. Oh gosh, I know so much more now. But yeah, it was just this need to start working with my hands again
Yeah.
and touching fabric.
Something so almost healing about that tactile. It's very soothing. And one of my favorite things to do, I don't know if this is how you feel about this, but I love ironing. I love the
Yeah.
smell of
Hmm.
cotton or wool underneath my iron. I love ironing when I'm quilting. It's one of my favorite things to do.
I do as well. I think anything that has to do with that tactile, as you were
Yeah,
saying,
it's the
that to
smells. It's
go
kind of the
from,
whole experience, right?
yeah, and making, and I wasn't making stuff for other people. I was making stuff for myself,
Nice.
which was so with no plan, no
No
rules,
no
no,
purpose, no end goal,
yeah,
just making this. Nice.
yeah. And really kind of how it happened was I've been collecting fabrics my whole life.
Sure.
So this is where this love of textiles, like from my childhood, from my travels around the world, I just had these bookshelves where I've folded all these fabrics kind of like they're books,
Yeah.
kind of like they're art pieces
Yeah, yeah.
that I would just see when I was in my office or if I was walking through the house. And I was always scared to do anything with them. That feeling when you have something so perfect and precious and you don't want to waste it
You don't
or
want to
use
mess
it
it up.
wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Totally. And I was like, well, that's why I should make a quilt to use
Yes.
some of these fabrics. And I started with this cotton fabric that was from, I actually have a picture of myself when I was 3 years old with this fabric because I grew up on a Hindu commune
Okay.
and it was a sari that um, it was like a little kid's sari that I was wearing. And so I have all of these silk and cotton saris from my childhood.
Beautiful.
And I just was like, huh, okay, I'm going to cut it up. And then I didn't buy one piece of fabric. I just pulled all these different pieces of fabric from my stash. Did I know it was called a stash at that point? No.
No.
But that was that was really what got me quilting. Wasn't I didn't see a pattern. I didn't see, the latest Riley Blake collection. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It was more just coming from this place of I have these beautiful textiles
Yeah.
and I want to use my hands to make them into something.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's such an important piece that, and I talk about this a fair bit. It's about filling our own cups, right? Like
Mm.
in when you're sustainability is sort of the foundations of sustainability are the people, profit, planet, which I don't love the sound of. I rather
Mm.
think about our communities, our benefits, and the materials we're using. That's how I prefer to think about it because it relates more to what we're doing. So if we're working within our community and we're wanting to give within our community, sometimes we're not in a position to give. We actually need to be given to, and we kind of have to fill our own cups first before we've got extra that we can actually give. And so I feel like it's an important thing for us to acknowledge and say that that's okay. We're actually allowed to fill
Mm.
our own cups up. and and quilting affords this amazing space to kind of do that and sit within ourselves and give ourselves the space to think about stuff and fill up our own cups. It's important. I think it's super important.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting you say it that way because I think that's what I did. I was so depleted
Yeah.
when I left my job that those 6 months that I didn't try to start a business, I didn't look for a new job, I didn't do anything. I had saved a lot of money. I'd prepared for it, but I I used quilting and fabrics and textiles in the process of like making things with my hand and my Bernita to kind of replenish
Yeah.
those things. And then when I was replenished, then I was like, okay, now what?
Now what
Because
can
I
you give?
can't,
Right? And
yeah.
now you're giving and it's amazing what you're doing now.
Well, and it's fascinating because I didn't approach what I'm doing to specifically be an upcycler or,
Right.
be sustainable. It's something that it's just kind of ingrained
Sure.
in how I am. And my focus where I use apparel fabrics, I use a lot of denim. I don't specifically do that to save the world. Of course, I would love to save the world,
Sure.
I do
Sure.
it because that's what fills my cup. That's what I think is amazing is using mixed textiles.
Yeah.
And I do think that sometimes there's a bit of a not misunderstanding, but misrepresentation or stereotype about upcycling where the only way it is if you go to a thrift store and buy a pair of pants and like sew them onto a quilt.
Right.
And what I'm kind of trying to do now is help people understand that everything around you is just fabric. Like just because a shirt or a pair of pants now has a button or a sleeve, it's still fabric. And
Yeah.
to me, there's nothing more beautiful than combining fabrics and textures and hand feel and drape and all those things. I would find it constraining to just quilt with one type of cotton.
So you use all kinds of different, like you use a stretch and you'll use a velvet and you'll use a satin and you'll use whatever when you're working.
So, yes and no. I think I'll it's kind of those levels of what's ideal versus what
Sure.
could I do because I have this background. I would say the one thing I try to avoid is stretch.
Okay.
And whether I'm pulling from my own closet or if I am shopping secondhand, and this is what I will tell people if they're kind of asking me for tips of what to do. That that's just if you feel that something has stretch in it, it's just going to be a little bit harder
Yeah.
to work with.
Yeah, I know some people will use, if they're going to do stretch, they'll stitch it down onto a piece of cotton, a muslin that isn't stretch, so that it's got a place to
Yep.
be.
Or you can always use like a fusible
Yeah,
interfacing or and same thing with if you're doing something with a lot of like long bias edges.
yeah,
Sometimes I'll do that as well. But I think the positive thing is there's so many options out there. I think that is, if
Yeah.
you're just starting out, that's a pretty easy thing to avoid, because it's also a pretty easy thing to identify. Because I have
Yeah,
a
for
lot of
sure.
people ask, um, like, how do you identify different fabrics
Yeah.
when you go shopping
Yeah.
or when
Yeah.
you buy secondhand? And I mean, really, truly, the only way to identify fibers is burn them,
Right.
which is not.
They don't really want you doing
And
that in the thrift shop.
no,
Take a little lighter and give it a little, no, you have to do that when you get it home.
yeah. So
And so,
I mean,
that's,
and
but that's interesting because not a lot of people know about and burn them. So what happens when you burn the fabric? How does
well,
it tell
so
you what is what?
yeah. So if you think about, generally there's fibers from natural items like cellulosic fibers or animal fibers, and then there's people made fibers, there's plastic. And so
Yeah.
if you think about like what happens if you burn a plant versus if you burn a plastic,
Yeah.
and if you burn a plant fiber, it's generally going to be kind of ashy, or it'll actually, burn, it'll disintegrate, versus a plastic, which will melt.
Right.
So that is a very, again, I am not telling everybody to go and start lighting all
No,
their
no,
fabrics
no,
on fire.
no.
But
If you're doing this,
if
maybe
you
have a
were,
cup of water right beside what you're lighting on fire. Be prepared to do this in a
absolutely.
place that it could be extinguished easily.
But there's very specific smells, but
Yeah,
also if it turns into like a little bead, you
that's
generally,
the
like a little
melting. Yeah,
globule, that is a melting.
yeah,
And I think it's also one of those things, so the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. And
yeah,
so I'm really lucky to have some great creative reuse centers around San Francisco Bay Area. And what those are, I'm sure most people know, but if you don't know, it's places that get donations of art supplies and fabrics that that were probably destined for a landfill. And sometimes
yeah,
they'll give them to schools, or you can go and buy. And of course, the thing is, one of the ones near me has amazing fabrics. They're not going to be labeled what they're made out of.
right. And they're
And
just
so it
yardage.
really is about going through and touching them, just yardage bundles.
Okay.
And that's where the more comfortable you get, the easier it is for you to kind of identify those. A couple weeks ago, I was at Scrap SF, which is this great creative reuse center in San Francisco, and I was going through touching everything because I just have to touch everything.
Yeah.
That's how kind of I know what it is. But again, I've been working with fabrics my whole life, and there was something that I bet a lot of people thought was, I don't know, a used dish towel or some weird, bundle of like kind of off-white colored thing. The minute I touched it, I knew it was raw silk,
Oh,
because
nice.
it's just, raw silk has this almost like sticky
Yeah,
feeling
yeah.
to
It's got
it.
like a little hook to it almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, of course, it was like $1,
Oh my
for
God.
a couple yards. I got it. And then silk also dyes really well. So
Nice. Yeah.
even though it was this weird off-white color, like I was able to dye it. And those are the things that I love too.
What kind of dyes do you like using?
Well,
There's lots of
so
debate about
I know,
lots of
as
debate.
you
Yeah.
are, I'm part of the quilty nook,
Yes,
Zach
yes.
Foster quilty nook. And I made the mistake of joining the natural dye room.
Okay.
And
I
now
haven't gone in there yet.
oh my gosh. So, I mean, I would love to natural dye. I have a small place in San Francisco with no backyard.
Right.
And so I'm not there yet. So also at creative reuse centers, you can find
Like
dye.
the RIT dyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just have some RIT dyes I've bought secondhand,
Yeah.
and have used those.
I was talking with somebody recently. It's a guy who's been in the textile industry most of his life. Yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. I think he's going to be on the podcast. He will have already been on the podcast when yours airs. His name's Graham Stewart, and he's with Fiber 52, and they are doing a project where they are reducing the amount of water that's required and the amount of energy that's required in the processing part of getting fabric ready to be dyed. and then putting it through dye baths. And the process is reducing the amount of water, and I can't remember the percentages now, but extremely low water requirements and extremely low energy requirements for virtually the same process at the end of the day. And then the water is clean as well. So we were talking about dyes, and I was saying, like what, because he's a master dyer. He's done this his whole life, right? And so he was telling me that the RIT dyes are, once they are in, they're pretty stable. Actually, they're not really, they're not going to be shedding in the same way as some of the other synthetic dyes might. So the RIT dyes are actually pretty stable dyes, and the natural dyes, we love to think that natural dyes, because they're called natural dyes, that they're really good, but they require chemicals in order to bond them and mordant them with our materials. And then those mordants are, they are metals that can be toxic, right? And can be difficult to dispose of. So we have to be careful when we say, natural dyes are the way to go. I use natural dyes. I love using natural dyes, but I'm also very careful about how I deal with the waste. And I happen to be fortunate enough that I have 7.5 acres of property that I can work with. And so
I'm so glad that you said that, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that I hear this a lot. Oh, well, I'll just sew with organic cotton, or I'll just, this idea that these certain things are good for the environment. And I think that was also being on the inside, being on the product development side. They're better.
They're better.
They're better,
still
but
problematic.
Still, the water, the chemicals, everything. And the same when you talk about plant-based fibers. I think for a long time, everybody thought, well, all those, fibers that come from a tree or from somewhere, a natural element, those are good for the environment. But think about, if you take a fiber that comes from a tree and you want to turn it into a soft drapey fabric, that requires chemicals to do.
It requires a lot of chemicals, and it requires a lot of processing. So water, energy, all to do the processing around all of that. And they're not all regulated processes either, and not heavily regulated, and not necessarily hitting the thresholds we'd like them to hit. And so, it's one of those things, like we live in this world, right? We're humans. We need fiber in our worlds, in our lives every single day. We are using fibers and textiles in some way, shape, or form. And, the cotton industry, whether it's organic or not, supplies 40% of the global fiber requirements. It's an enormous contributor. Like we can't walk away from it because our world requires it. But I don't know, I think what we can do is consume less, use what we already have instead of buying new and adding more to our world. And then buying safer fabrics that have these certifications that are doing better than not doing anything, but they're still problematic.
Absolutely. And I'm really big on little steps. Yeah. So I think part of the issue is when, like, everything you just said, someone could hear that and say, well, then what's the point?
Totally.
Like, it's overwhelming.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I would never tell someone, don't buy a piece of new fabric ever again in your life, or you have to do these specific rules. I think if people just start to recognize, the potential in everything around them, if you spend a little bit more money and buy an amazing shirt or dress out of a natural fiber, and 2 or 3 years ago, or years later, you don't want to use it anymore. Like, what if you already knew that you would keep that and you would turn it into something else?
Yeah.
And that idea of cycling things, like being circular rather than
circularity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I really think that's where we need to go.
Like many of you, I'm deeply concerned about the urgency of climate issues and the environmental impact of the textile industry. And as I've thought about this over the last few years, I've realized that there's this huge need for a supportive community that celebrates sustainable practices and shares knowledge and inspires change. So I'm excited to announce the Green Stitchers Hive, and it's a place for textile lovers who share that passion for nature, creativity, and sustainability. There is a range of exciting programs and events going on in the Hive. It's an online space with virtual sewing circles, a curated suppliers directory. There's monthly virtual Hive gatherings where we come together and share our projects and our ideas and our insights. There's also tutorials and courses and live events going on. It's an exciting space. If this is something that you're interested in, you can head on over to my website at bridgetoflaherty.com and you can register there. Well, and I think also, like, when you talk about that overwhelm of, like, one person couldn't possibly do it all. Well, no, of course, one person can't possibly do it all, but we are not one person on this planet. We are people on this planet. And one person gets to be a part of whatever is going on. So we can make choices for ourselves. We fill up our own cup. We make our own decisions about how we want to move in the world. And maybe we make some tiny, small adjustments in how we're thinking and what we're doing. And like you say, making those adjustments about how we think of what we're going to do with our future use, but also just maybe even thinking smaller, like just one project. My next project, I'm going to not buy any new material. I'm going to use what I already have. That's enough. That's enough. That's all that person has to do for that right now. You don't have to do any more.
Absolutely. Or if maybe you're going to buy fabric for a new project and you think, why don't I first look at some great places online that sell secondhand fabric? Like, look there first. Look at someone's D-stash. Like, buying from a D-stash, or again, Quilting Nook has this. I think a lot of places have this online. Opportunities to share between quilters and makers. I just sent a pile of really cool green colored different types of linens and cottons to a fellow quilter today, because I have more than I need. They're doing a special project. And I do think, those little things. Yeah. I also think that what we kind of call the modern quilting world or modern quilting, I think has gone to kind of a I'm trying to figure out the right way to say this.
It's okay. Take your time.
Yeah. I think there's opportunity in the modern quilting world to bring in things like upcycling and talk about them a little bit different. Because kind of as I mentioned before, upcycling doesn't have to mean you're making a modern or a, organic patchwork improv style quilt. It could just mean that with your Kona cotton, with your like Riley Blake fabric, you're also mixing in, one shirt that you've cut down to be, a fat quarter, or one, piece that you've picked up from someone else's D-stash or from a creative reuse center. So I do think that there's what I was surprised at a little bit when I got more involved in this modern quilting world was how much it was tied to just buying quilting cotton.
Quilting cotton and new lines of quilting cotton, the newest trend, whatever is coming out. 3 months later, we've got a new line coming out. 3 months later, we got a new line coming out.
Yeah, and again, being in apparel, God, I understand why you're trying to sell, you're trying to make things new and exciting, give people a reason to buy. And I think that's okay, but it doesn't have to be everything. And this idea of what is modern, because again, going back to apparel, there is a movement in apparel towards sustainability for sure, towards authenticity, towards heritage. Yeah. Again, like I saw a lot of this working for Levi's, but that is what a younger generation is really looking for, is to find a way to express themselves, but know that they're doing it with a brand or with someone who has some type of connection to the past. Yeah. And that's what I do. I think my impression of what's happening in quilting right now is to kind of almost break from the past completely,
Right.
versus this mix of, I mean, what was quilting? It was taking all these little things around
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
quilting them together. And I don't think that that has to look old or outdated.
Right. Well, and
I
that's just trend, right? Like that's just, and that's subjective. It's so subjective. And
Yeah, but I
yeah,
think you can have a really modern quilt pattern and you can still upcycle, and you can, I don't
absolutely.
think
Yeah.
there's these lines, I guess. And
Yeah. So tell me a bit more about what you're doing now. Like, so you
yeah.
decided to jump into this being a business. We just went on a little bit of a side tirade there, which is totally great. Um, but tell me a little bit about what you're
Yeah.
doing now. Like you've decided, okay, I'm doing a business. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, that is such a great question for me to try to answer. It's ever evolving. But what really sits well with me, and where I'm really excited, is to focus on helping upcycling be more accessible. And what I
Nice.
just mean by that is helping people be more comfortable using fabrics.
And so how are you doing
And
that? What are you showing
so
people?
I where I wanted to start, because it's where I started, was understanding textiles.
Okay.
And not everybody cares like what a weave is and warp versus weft and all of those things. But I found that it's, once you know those things, it's a once you know the rules, you can then break the rules type of thing.
Sure. Okay. Nice.
That's kind of how I do it. But I have started to put together a lot of little guides on, like, what's the difference between a quilting cotton versus denim, and what is a twill versus a plain weave, what's a basket
Okay.
weave, just again to, well, first because I find it super interesting, but
Yeah.
also I do believe that once you understand like how fabrics are put together, how they come to life, it's just easier to manipulate them, it's easier to make them
Sure.
do them to do,
Yeah.
and it's easier to recognize what you're looking for kind of when you're out at a secondhand store
Sure.
and you're buying kind of secondhand fabric.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. And so I found you, either on, I can't remember if it was Instagram or TikTok. I was on TikTok for a minute. I'm not there anymore. I
Oh god,
can't quite
I wish
process
I wasn't
TikTok
there.
myself,
Yeah.
but I'm on Instagram and you're on Instagram as well. And you're doing some
Mhm.
great videos where they're just these really quick reels that kind of give people that information, right? Like, and so how are you finding, like, that's such an interesting, um, medium to be
Oh
talking to
god.
people through. I
I
struggle
mean,
with it myself.
yeah, it's a necessity right now,
Yeah.
right? Like, and it is this if you can't beat them, join them thing, where I'm just a silly person and I like to share information. And
Yeah.
if, as part of a small business owner, if part of that is you have to be on Instagram or TikTok and make videos, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to have fun with it.
Nice.
And I think that's maybe, I think that appeals to people because they can tell that I don't take myself too seriously, or I hope they can tell I don't take
Yeah.
myself too seriously.
But you're still
But
authentic in it. Like it's still the real you,
yeah,
right?
so that goes back to me leaving the corporate world and me not being able to be my authentic self for like
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever I do now, it's going to be me.
Nice.
And if people don't like it, or if it doesn't, relate to them or help them, totally fine. There are
Yeah.
so many other people.
There's enough to go around.
Yeah.
There's
But if
enough.
you follow me or come to me for information, I kind of say, like, I'm going to be your very knowledgeable but medium silly friend,
Nice.
because that is just, I know what I'm talking about from my years of being in the industry and just having that hands-on experience. But I also don't want to, I mean, I don't want to kill the joy that comes,
Yeah.
again, also that joy that I found when I started quilting,
Yeah.
of working with your hands and kind of enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely. And so you're starting, we were talking about this just before we started recording. You're starting to do a bit of a directory. So tell me a bit about that.
Yeah. So what? for the last couple months, I've just been looking for places to buy secondhand fabric.
Yeah.
And again, as I said, I'm really lucky to have great places in person in the Bay Area. But also, I've only found maybe one place online. Now I've found two. Feel Good Fibers I don't work for them. I just think they're awesome.
No, they're
They kind of
great.
help
They're
people
totally
do,
great. Yeah.
destashes. Totally check them out. But like, I am always Googling, where can I find? Where can I find?
Yeah.
Because that's really the first step. The first step isn't telling people how to, make a shirt into a piece of fabric. I mean, I can do that too, but do you know that there's all these places where you can get really good quality, amazing fabric secondhand?
Yeah.
So I started to, and it's a bit of a slog, but try to pull a directory together of every creative reuse center in the US that has fabric.
That is ambitious. That's big.
Yeah. But plus all kind of the online resources where you can find secondhand fabric. Because I think, again, just put it out there. If it's that easy for someone to click on it and find, and I'm actually probably going to be going out on Instagram or TikTok and asking people to send me their resources.
Awesome.
Because this isn't something, that one person can do. And
no, takes a collective mind. So we were talking and I was telling you that I'm also starting a directory. I'm going to be having it in my online community that is coming out in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully by the time this airs, it will be up and running. And in that community, you're going to be able to click on the resources for finding hopefully the reuse places that I'm also looking for. So maybe you and I can swap some details, swap information, and then also places and the different kinds of products that are actually out there that are on that other sustainable scale, right? Around the having the labeling and certifications around them for new materials, where I feel like, yes, using what we have first, upcycling next, and then if we still need to go out and buy fabric, then let's buy something that's under a certification. So it's at least moving towards doing better and producing better materials in the long run.
Yeah, and I was very surprised, I guess, initially when I came into quilting and didn't see a lot of sustainable options.
No, I know. It's been really hard.
Googled a fair amount, found some organic cotton options, but they are also fairly expensive.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I totally agree with you. It's all these different steps, and there isn't all or nothing. And,
and there's no one right answer either. There's no best answer for any of this, really.
But the thing that's also great about buying secondhand is it's affordable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and I know that, everybody could use that a little bit. But I do think what you're doing is also super interesting because there's so many different levels. And that's where we go back to, you can buy something that says it's organic, but then is it GOT certified? Is it?
Do we know?
Are your fabrics Okotex? Like, there's so many things, and that can get so overwhelming for people.
Which is why I want to try to put that into one resource so people don't have to do the searching for it. That's what I like doing. I love researching. I love finding that information.
And people have probably seen a lot of dead stock fabrics start to pop up in their searches. And that is another very controversial topic because what dead stock really is the excess fabric that, when a mill is producing, let's say they have to make 10,000 shirts for a company and the company overorders fabric, or they make extra, or maybe there's some fabric with a little tiny, issue with it that the company isn't going to buy. They end up with this fabric just sitting on their shelves.
Right.
And sometimes they offer it to other companies at a discount. Sometimes they give it, you'll hear the term like jobbers, people that go around and buy all of this excess fabric from these mills and then resell it. And so on one hand, if you're buying dead stock, you are kind of helping a fabric not end up in a landfill, but you're kind of not.
Still supporting this overconsumption world.
Absolutely. In fact, the more that people know that they can just sell that excess fabric off to somebody, the more that these companies will continue to overproduce. So, but again, dead stock is probably better than new. So it's just those levels.
Yeah. And again, there's just no one right answer in all of this. This is a dynamic thing that we are just going to continually work on to try and find better ways of maneuvering in this world so we can create cool things. That's really what we want to do in the end, is we want to be creative and
Absolutely.
do it with a good conscience, a clear conscience, and feel like for me, I just want to feel like when I'm creating something that I am keeping my core values in place as I'm creating. And for a long time I didn't honor that because I didn't know I could, and I didn't know how to, and I didn't know where to get the stuff, and I just kind of did my values in other areas, but not in my quilt world. But now I want it in my quilt world. So I'm trying to find ways of finding those materials. It's tricky.
Absolutely. It is. And so one other thing that I have started doing is, because my goal is really to help small businesses. And I want to, even though I kind of have, I don't know, my own brand, my own thing, my goal with that is still eventually to not have to, I don't want to be a face on any kind of social media platform. I want to be behind the scenes helping other people with all these pieces that I know.
Nice.
And like, for example, I have a dear friend who's starting a denim line, and she produces in LA. So right off the bat, that's great. She's producing in the US.
Nice.
She's still producing, new fabric. But I helped her come up with, she had, when you cut out pattern pieces, or a factory cuts out pattern pieces, they'll have these excess fabric that they,
yes. So is she going towards zero waste?
Yes, she's going towards zero waste. So I helped her design this little pouch that would use exactly the shape of that fabric that came out. And so that's a whole other piece, is the idea of zero waste, and looking at, if you're going to buy from a company, looking where they produce, looking if they have stuff like that in place.
Yeah.
And that's actually something the idea of making patterns that are zero waste too is something I think is super cool. And there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's nice to start seeing zero waste patterns coming into the quilt world. I've seen it in the garment world for a while now. It's still small, it's still niche, but it's there. But now I'm starting to see it coming into the quilt world, which is super exciting. You just released a pattern, right?
I did, yes, which was, I started this so many months ago, and I had this moment of thinking, well, again, does it align with my values to put a pattern there? And what I ended up realizing, so first off, my values are around helping other people in community.
Yeah.
And the absolute best thing that I got out of this entire process was working with and meeting all of my testers.
Amazing.
They're like the most amazing group of people. They know this. I've told them many times, but the idea of creating this community and working together and learning from each other, like that was just the best part.
Nice.
But what I want to do is, my quilt, the pattern I released is all these shades of blue. I am going to be showing people how you can make it with denim and chambray.
Nice. What's chambray? What's chambray? I don't know what that is.
Yeah. So chambray basically it's a plain weave. So it's your most basic weave. But if you ever see the term yarn dye, basically where it means just that the yarns are dyed before they're woven, versus something like, say, a Kona cotton red, it's dyed after it's woven. So a chambray is when one of the yarns is white and the other yarn traditionally is blue, but chambrays can be any. But it's that if you think of like men's shirts that almost look like denim, but they're super, super lightweight.
Yeah.
That's kind of what.
Okay.
That's a very basic explanation.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, no. And, but the reason why, like, I'm bringing those in is I want to help people. What are the types of things you would find if you went to a Salvation Army, a Goodwill? And men's blue woven shirts are going to be there.
Yeah.
and jeans are
Well,
going to
especially if you
be
get the extra large, you get like a lot of fabric out of that shirt.
absolutely. And I have to say, I have heard and gotten some feedback that there's a bit of a concern when makers or people that upcycle say to go buy the largest size, because then that means that people in the community that are a larger size are having problems like with finding
Finding
stuff.
the, oh, okay. So it's using it in a way that is taking away the use of the shirt.
Yes.
Okay.
The thing that I would say with that is because there's actually also a big pushback in the apparel resale market right now, where people are talking a lot about people shouldn't go take secondhand stuff and resell it because it is limiting the affordability for people who are lower income and who want to just buy that. This is my problem with that is secondhand stores only even ever sell, even put out on the floor like 30% of the product they get.
Right.
There is not a shortage of secondhand clothes being donated in this country.
Yeah.
So I do, while I want to be super aware about accessibility, and the intent is never to kind of take away from lower income people or people that need to be able to buy these clothes, that's all they can afford.
Right. But there's no shortage.
There is no shortage. Again, as like there are these just insane statistics out there about it's like 80% of the stuff that we buy ends up in a landfill. And that's including stuff you donated. And I mean, I'm learning every day. I didn't know 3 or 4 years ago, I donated stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
well, like 85% of what we, like every human, sorry, not 85%, every human in North America gets rid of about 85 pounds worth of textiles every year. That's a lot of textiles.
Absolutely. And I think, again, this is once you understand a textile. So like I made this little guide about different weaves, talk a little bit about linen. I mean, linen is one of the best fibers out there. And I know that though that sometimes people think it's a little bit challenging to work with. But what's interesting is it's not the linen that's challenging to work with. It's the fact that probably you have a really loose weave,
right,
that moves around a lot. It's not actually the fiber.
It's the weave.
But but once you understand that and you kind of think a little bit more about the grain line and how you're cutting things. Yeah. And that's also something I tried to do when I released my pattern was to mix in a little bit of textile info
education. In it. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So will you include the link for that that guide for us? Can we put that into the show notes? Yeah. Great.
Because hopefully by the time that this is released, it will be done.
Okay. No, the guide for the material, like the type of materials. Yeah, yes, that one.
That I will, and that's something.
We'll worry about the other directories as we both get those out. We'll make sure that we're. Yeah.
That's something that I've just created part 1, and I have this giant list of all these different things I want to include in there. So it's just going to it'll be a breathing document where I keep kind of including.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So tell us a bit more about where people can find you.
So I am on all of the social media channels, unfortunately. Unless the US bans TikTok, then I won't be there.
Right.
But definitely on Instagram at Sewing Through Fog, and website under the same name as well.
Okay.
And those are probably the best places to find silly videos from me.
Fantastic. We'll include those in the show notes as well. Thank you for this. This has been I love this conversation. This has been a great conversation, I like being able to talk to you about some of the challenges of thrifting and upcycling and how people can navigate that. That's, I think, a super important piece, but also just talking about some of the issues around the industries. I think that's, it's one of those things that we wrestle with, right? Like, I think that as humans, we're always in a bit of a dichotomy, no matter what we do, where we want to be here, but we're over here. And how do we get there? So it's always, there's a bit of a struggle to get where we want to go and follow that flow and allow space for getting there.
I'm not about to let go of beautiful things. Like,
Yeah.
I love fashion. There is something, not the judgmental brand side of fashion, but the idea of clothes and textiles and trends. And I just find it amazing. And I'm not letting that go. I am just, as you said, kind of living your life in a way that aligns with your values and finding a way to do that in quilting, but still being able to make beautiful things that I want to make.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally true. I think that's the goal, a good goal. It's a good goal. Anyway, thank you for being here today. It's been really great talking to you.
As to you.
One of the things that I really like about this conversation with Radha, who I now feel is one of my close friends because she's a fun and interesting person and such a kind and sharing person as well. I really liked that she was willing to share some of the difficulties she was having around the business that she was in and needing to take that time and space to be creative. And that when she took that time away from the work that she was doing, she was confined to her house like most of us were with COVID. And she just decided to let her creativity guide her and direct her. And sometimes that's one of the best things that we can do for ourselves, right? Is just listen and allow the journey to happen without trying to direct it. And I think that was one of the important takeaways from that conversation for me, even to just allow my creativity to go where it needs to go and see where that takes me in the long run. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you are enjoying the podcast, please share this with somebody. Send it over to somebody that you think would enjoy listening to it. If you're interested in a community that engages with sustainability in quilting and textiles, you can join the Learning Hub at BridgetO'Flaherty.com. There you will find memberships, online courses, supplies, and resources for sustainability and my textile art. You can also book me to speak with or teach your group. You can find me on social media at The Sustainable Quilter. Don't forget to comment, like, and share, and to follow me on your favorite podcast app so you won't miss an episode. Thanks for joining me, and I'm so excited to share this journey with you. Until next time, happy stitching.